as well. In fact, one of the Italian model makers, I think it was Barago, made Tyrrell models using the same moulds as the Lotus, just painted it blue.
Now, yeah, that's the way to go, isn't it? But one of the most interesting cars, of course, almost the most short-lived, was the Lotus 88B on screen at the moment. And Colin Chapman was determined to iron out the problems. There was so little suspension movement, the drivers were getting shaken around. So he put one chassis effectively for the car, another for the bodywork. And as the cars went faster, the bodywork pushed itself down onto the track. So the car was absolutely legal in the pit lane, but rather against the spirit went out on the track. So not all of Colin Chapman's ideas got to really go out and work. But as you can see, almost no wings on that car, just the wing at the back, and the outer section is the bit that gets pushed down at speed. Very,
very odd sensation. I've driven one at Donington Park, and when you back off the chicane, you go through chicane pretty slowly. The top chassis, if you like, comes up and takes the wing mirrors with it. And as soon as you come out of the accelerator again, it seals itself back to the floor, comes down little biro springs, and it really is the most odd thing. But a great experience to have driven one.
But those were the days when the rulebook wasn't as restrictive as it is nowadays. Nowadays, pretty much all the cars look alike.
Transport employed by the Grand Prix drivers in the 1970s.
And didn't they land in the strangest of places? On the straight at Alton Park. And,
yeah, and Snetterton. Arrived in your Piper Aztec or something.
I remember one of our colleagues was being told a tale. I think he was actually flying with Ralph Furman of Van Diemen fame, and Ralph looked out the windows again of Belgium and said, "Is that Zolder down there or Spa?" You'd like to think he knew which one he was the closer to, but I think racing people make very good drivers. I'm not sure they make the best pilots in the world.
Good old Ralph. He had one or two adventures on the road, that's for sure. This road car's had a fairly short half-life.
Freddie Hunt not hanging around in the Hesketh.
Well, as he said, he's had one lap here before behind the safety car, so this will be a very, very different experience. I think he'll start to realise that Harvey Postlethwaite really was quite a star. This car was always a really well-handling beastie. The Hesketh 308. Right, those wonderful period numbers on the airbox, 24. Great lettering.
It's a lovely-looking car, but it's perhaps not the most neatly packaged, with radiators hanging out the back underneath the wing, and that additional kind of nose canard fin out the front. Has a pretty good old gurney flap on it these days, a little bit more frontal downforce. But yes, that's super, and he'll be loving that.
But also the Hesketh team just famous for having a livery devoid of sponsorship.
Here's Andy Willis with the Ferrari flat 12 engine,
which had its disadvantages because, of course, it was a wide engine, which meant that the side pods, the tunnels, had to be a bit narrower, or the inside of them, so not as much ground effect as the full ground effect Lotuses.
And it has to be said, looking at that 312 T5, that even its mother couldn't have described it as beautiful. From the front end, it is an extraordinary sort of melange of shapes just to try and get the downforce.
Probably quite thirsty as well, I would have thought.
So Bruce, shut your eyes and just listen to the noise.
I'm prepared to do anything to keep the fever going, and yes, quite so. That flat 12 coming past. But it was a time of such exploration in Formula One. Once ground effects had been harnessed for the first time, it was catch-up, and of course Lotus did such a good job with the Lotus 78 to conceal why they were so effective, and by the time the 79 was built, the others were still scratching. They thought Lotus had a completely different advantage, and then some teams caught up far.
Essentially the first flying lap, but we can see what he did. I think he was in the 10s yesterday from what we heard.
Let's put a clock on the Ligier. What a lovely sound.
Loic Demant's not hanging around either. He's in a Tyrrell 010, Belgian driver. Raced in Radicals before he moved into the F1 series. So nearly won the FIA Masters Championship last year, the Belgian. The man who did win it is in the dark green Tyrrell, now running in a kind of ground effect spec, having been updated over the winter by John Felsted at Wolf Manufacturing. Another 78 Lotus, that's Katsuaki Kubota. Let's see what all that puff of dust or whatever was there, vapor maybe. Mario Andretti look-alike, isn't it, in the Lotus 79, the Black Beauty.
Feels painted to the road.
Oh, it's fantastic.
But the first car out around the circuit, it just makes the sound that only a Ferrari can make, and that's Andrew Willis on board the 312 T5. Oh, dearie me, already. The first car's gone past, and I'm feeling quite weepy.
Andy from Hall and Hall. He's driven this car at the Festival of Speed on the hill climb course.
In historic F1, they're not allowed to run skirts, am I right? But
in the racing championship, yeah, you've got to have a 40 mil ride height. But you can see they've got skirts on these cars now. Just, in fact, it's not touching the ground, but it's not going quickly yet. So it was one of the most beautiful of Formula One cars. Livery helped, of course, didn't it? But
the Spanish Grand Prix, they did the 3 flyaways at the start of the season and came back, and I felt cars never looked as good again after they whipped those tall airboxes out, and certainly the teams lost a lot of very valuable space for their sponsors' names.
I think that's probably Greg Galdian from the States with that one.
Do you think they lost some power as well?
It's possible, but of course the engines were always being developed, and they probably fiddled around with. For sure, here comes the 007. That's pushing on, you know.
It is
one of the quickest cars on the track at the moment. And that's young Stuart Hall.
Which tallies, since it's a Rothko collection car, and Stuart will be driving with Raoul Goethe in the World Endurance Championship this year, so he's formed a very useful alliance there.
The Shadow Matra sounds fantastic as it goes past us. Stuart Hall comes up to Ron Maiden, who's in a Hesketh 308B.
Wasn't Keith Duckworth rather rude about the Matra engine, saying a lot of the power comes out of the exhaust pipe?
Yeah, but it still sounded great.
It did.
You don't need every car to win. You know, one of the cars that absolutely stands out, it's not as bright as it was before, the sky, but that day-glow orange on the top of the McLaren M23 being driven at the moment. I think that's Falk Rochinol's car, Marcus. 1975 it would be. They had that colour at the head of the season. They'd had the more red car in 75, and then for 76 they just went full day-glow for McLaren.
Car owner, team owner if you like, Richard Mines in the second. That's Joaquin Falk in the Lotus. He's driving not his own Lotus turbo car, but Clive Chapman's has been wheeled into the fray because the problem with Joaquin's the Spaniard. Races motorcycles, everything from motorcycles to historic Grand Prix cars.
The other type 98T, if we see it later on, is the
Not a lot of room for Andrew Beaumont to squeeze through there, but made it very safely.
Is Schuster driving the Ferrari?
I'm not sure, in actual fact. I think that may be. It looks like one of the Rob Hall crash helmets in that, and brilliant display. That's Rob Hall in the Ferrari 312T with the white airbox. Clay Regazzoni drove that car in period. Cedric is only a great Swiss racer, raced in Formula 3 and up into Formula 1. He was the first winner of a Grand Prix for Williams Grand Prix Engineering, and that triggered that sort of landmark era for Williams with the FWO 7 and 8 cars.